Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to walk through the intro to Project 3, formatting text content with CSS. So to get started, you want to go ahead and download the demo files from this week's itinerary on D12, so week 8. So over here, below Project 3, the assignment description, you'll find CSS Demo 1. You're going to go ahead and click on it, or just download it. I'm going to go to this screen, however, and I have the download button here as well. So go ahead and download it. Also, I am going to have Adobe Color ready and available. I've already picked out a color theme. And I also have my Google fonts ready to go. I've already chosen the Google fonts that I want to add into my project. So if you've not watched those videos yet, go back and watch the video on how to use Adobe Color and how to use Google Fonts. Once the file has downloaded, you want to make sure to pull it out of your downloads and have it somewhere either on your desktop or your hard drive. So I'm going to go ahead and open brackets. Once brackets is open, I'm going to take the entire folder and drag and drop it into brackets. Or from within brackets, you could go to File and Open Folder. File, Open Folder. You don't want to just open a single file. Once that is in brackets, you want to go ahead and double click on index.html so that it shows up under working files in the left-hand column and that you see the code in the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and add in split screen just for a second. So remember, you can show two files next to each other. To do that, I'm going to go here next to working files to the settings icon. Right next to that, you have the split icon. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to do a vertical split. Of course, that's always up to you. And I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger for now so you can see that. So then I'm going to click and make sure the second window is active. Then from my panel on the left, I'm going to double click on style.css. There's nothing in there yet. We're going to begin adding it, but you should now see here style.css. And we're ready to get started. So at that point, you want to refer back to the assignment description and make sure that you're hitting all the parameters. Under procedure, it's a good idea to start at the beginning and work your way down. You don't necessarily have to. You can add things in as you're comfortable doing so. But if you follow that procedure step by step, you won't forget to add the things that you need to add. So starting at the top, it's going to tell you to go ahead and format your body tag and your header, your main, and your footer. In the assignment description, it also gives you an example. I don't want you to follow that example exactly with the files that you're going to turn in, but that's what I'm about to create right now, and that's fine if you want to create the same thing as you're walking through this video. Just remember that when you go to do your actual assignment, that it needs to look a lot different than mine does. You need to make different choices than I make. And it's fine if you make one or two choices the same, it just needs to not look exactly like mine. Okay, so over in my CSS, I'm going to go ahead and start out by adding one of my colors from my color theme as the background to my body. So I'm going to go ahead and add an element selector. So remember the differences between the selectors. We have the element selector, we have a class selector, and we have an ID selector. If you don't remember what those are or how to use them, you want to go back in the itineraries and review that lesson on basic CSS syntax. Actually, it would probably be under another one of selectors, element, class, and ID selectors, the CSS selectors. So right now I'm using an element selector, meaning whatever I do now as CSS to that selector will apply to every instance of that element in my HTML. I only have one body element. I should only ever have one body element. And remember, you should only ever have one body, one head, one header, one main, and usually one footer, although these days you actually might see more than one footer. All right, so body, element selector, and I'm gonna go ahead and add in a background color. So background dash color. And if you do background dash color and add in that colon, you will see the drop down of colors. However, we're going to use the hex values from our color theme in Adobe Color anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up my code and shorthand this into just background. So background and then colon, bounce over to Adobe Color. I'm gonna go ahead and copy one of the colors from my color theme. So here I'm gonna go ahead and hover and copy, hide my browser, Command V to paste that back in, or over here into my CSS file. Okay, let's move on to header. Again, an element selector. I'm gonna give it a width, and here I could either do 100%, I want it to be 100% of the body. Right now, that's a choice I'm making. In the future, that's a choice you could do different. It doesn't have to be 100% of its parent element of the body. For now, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so I could do it 100%, but remember we learned last time, I could also set it to auto. Either way, it's going to be 100% of its parent, but if it's set to 100% and then you add padding and or border, it will fall out of its parent. It will be larger than its parent, and you don't want that. So instead, I'm gonna go ahead and set it to auto. It'll still be 100% of its parent, but it will not be allowed to fall out, even if I add padding and border. Moving on to height. So for height, I actually don't want this to be responsive, so I'm gonna give it a fixed pixel ratio. I'm gonna go ahead and set it to 200 pixels. That's a choice I'm making, that's a choice that you can make. You don't have to do 200 pixels, you can do whatever size you want. Then I'll give it a background color. So at that point, I'll bounce over and choose a color from my color theme. And then I'll go ahead and paste that in. So Command V on a Mac. That's good for now. We might want to make changes to the header later, but I'm gonna go ahead and just copy that. I could go ahead and just start a new selector, but you'll find that copy and paste is a good friend of yours when you're a coder. So I'm gonna go ahead and paste that and then change the selector to main and make whatever other changes I want to make. The main element you could set to a fixed pixel ratio for the height, but we already have content. So I can just set the height to auto, and I usually want to do that for main because as you create each page of your website, the header usually stays the same, the footer usually stays the same, but in the main, that is where the content changes from page to page. So by setting that height to auto, we can have that height of the main adjust for the content for each page, not having to go in and make a different height for every single page. So I did not want to do that to header, and I'm not going to do that footer because I want those to always stay the same. But setting height to auto is going to allow it to grow and shrink depending on the content of the main of that page. So I'm just kind of thinking ahead. So even though we only have one page that we're working on right now, we're setting ourselves up later so that when we do have a website with multiple pages, we don't have to code more than we need to. All right, and then I want to give that a different background color. So I'm going to bounce back over and grab another color from my theme. And then Command V to paste that in. And then the footer, I'm going to actually go back and copy the header once more. Make sure to change the selector to footer. And the reason I did that is, for the most part, I want most of it to be the same as the header. It's not always the case. For a very basic web page, usually the header and the footer will be the same color, not necessarily the same size, but that allows you to see when the page ends. You'll see different designs though where that isn't the case. You might have just a black footer or a footer of a different color. Just depends on the design. For now, we're going to go ahead and just give it the same color as the header, but I don't want it to be the same size. I'm not going to have a lot of content in my footer, so I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller. I'm just going to go with 50 pixels for the footer, but the width in the background I'm going to leave the same as the header. Okay, so now we've applied the box model to the body, header, main, and footer. We've given it dimension, we've given it some background color. We can actually begin to see these elements. They're no longer going to be invisible. So let's go ahead and open our preview. So I'm going to double click on that and give it a second to open. And we can see how our page exists right now. So I see the color that I gave the body. Oh, you know what? I gave it the same color as my header. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a different color for my header. That's why there's that big orange block at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a different color so we can see it. Now we can see where the header is. You don't just see it invisible, where you're then seeing the background color, or excuse me, the body color behind it. All right, so we have our header, we have our main, we have some text content and some images inside that main, and we're also going to need to give that color to the footer because, again, right now it's the same color as the body. So I'm going to grab that color once again. Probably I was already on my clipboard, but that's okay. All right, and take a look at our preview, and we should now see our footer there down at the bottom.